Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the 18th episode, series 2 of NDISCO'S Village Meeting podcast, hosted by Dr. Marcellina and Diaspora. How are you all doing? Welcome to Africa, welcome to culture, welcome to the African society and culture. This is where we discuss everything African, everything culture, our ways of life, our food, our clothing, our ways of raising our children, what makes us tick, really. So, we've been talking about a particular topic for the past few episodes, and this is the part 5 of that series. We have been talking about the accolade that has been given to Africans, um, you know, that they are really doing well in diaspora. And this is because in all walks of life, and this is not a boast, this is reality that is backed up by statistics and numbers and analyzed so much, and is being studied in some higher institutes of learning of why Africans do so well in diaspora, a land where, or lands or countries or communities where they left their own soil thousands of miles away to come to. Initially, they came to study and to take back their knowledge back to their homesteads. But unfortunately, things didn't go as well, and some of them stayed. Some of them really went back home to make differences as well. So we should give them that credit as well. But the questions that people keep asking, what did they do? How come these immigrants came over and with all the obstacles in their ways, they still excelled? Now their children are doing the same in most cases. So that's why we started talking about this because I have had these questions asked me by my friends and colleagues. So we started looking at who were the immigrants and when did they come. And we looked into aspects of education, how the parents encourage their children. And we looked at, you know, aspects of staying away from trouble, because we believe that we've come a long way to just come waste time getting into trouble, ending up in jail, and all that. Um, of course, there are very few that have misstepped and ended up in jail or in situations where it's not pleasant. But what we're talking about today, or we've been talking about, is the percentage, the high percentage that succeeded. So today, we are moving on to look at the cultural influence, and this is a big one. Um, what has culture got to do with it? How did our African immigrants who came over to any parts of diaspora, whether it's Asia, Europe, or North America, Australia, and the rest of the continents where they reside, um, what part did the culture that they bring with them, or they brought with them, or they keep bringing with them, um, what what the part does that play in making them so successful and in diaspora? So again, like I said, this is based or adapted from a book I wrote years ago, which is titled "Raising an African Child in America from the Perspective of an Immigrant Nigerian Mom." When I wrote this book, I had our children in mind, um, just observing, asking questions, and from also personal experience of um, what makes them move from point A to point B. How do they succeed? And how we actually help them be who they are. We may not have all the powers, but we believe we're guided by the spirits of our ancestors and especially by God. It's for the believers, or for those who also have other conduit to the main God. We all believe in the same God that He helps. Now, looking at cultural influence, let's first of all understand what culture is. Many people define culture in so many ways. So when we're saying that our cultural influence paved some ways or really played a good part, what do we mean? So there were many, many definitions. So this was the one I chose for my book from Kim Ann Zimmerman. She wrote that culture is the characteristics. Well, I'm sorry, characteristics of a particular group of people, defined by everything from language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. And to me, that seemed like the most appropriate, that encompasses everything the African live on. And also, um, I want to also encourage everyone in other parts of Africa, because Africa is very diverse, to think about what the particular culture in that area play in their households. Like I always share, I am from Nigeria. I am Igbo, from that ethnic group. I come from a community in Imo State, Mbise. We call it Mbise Nation. And so I draw whatever I'm going to share from this length of lineage um, of who I am. And I am hoping that everybody else will draw from theirs. So this is the culture definition we're going with today as we move on. And the second proverb, African proverb, that says, rain beats a leopard's skin, but it does not wash out the spots. This is a proverb that I added to my book when I wrote that. Actually, each chapter of my book started with a proverb because I believe in proverbs. They are deep. They tell us a lot. This is in response to people who say, oh, these African children or African adults are now in somebody else's country far away from home. They are no longer going to uphold the culture, or they are going to, mess the culture up, and whatever their fears were. Some fears are real, and it is real because you move from a pure African culture to another society that has, mixture of all types of culture. But what I'm saying here is that no matter where you find an African or you find Africans, they may not, relate to their ancestral culture as much as we envisage or who would like, as if they are on African soil. But they will always remember, there will always be a case where their culture will stir up um, to the surface. And especially for our children, the hyphenated ones that are born in diaspora or brought earlier in their ages to diaspora. It seems sometimes we've lost them. People, like, oh, no, they are behaving like foreigners. They're not behaving like Africans. I say to them, no matter how rain beats the leopard's skin, it does not wash out the spots. They will always come back to their roots. Do not worry about that. Okay? So let's explore some more. What I want to dwell on today is to touch on those points that um, really where our cultural influence relay. Um, the ancestral spirits we brought with us. Again, we've said it repeatedly that the first, second, third Africans that came over never wanted to really embrace totally the culture of the place now they call home. They were rigid, some of them, on maintaining those cultures, that cultural aspects that they brought with them. But as they also started raising their own children that were born here, the hyphenated ones, um, they, those African parents who migrated insisted on enforcing those attitudes or those ideas that were brought up with themselves back at the homestead. But sometimes it clashes, or some of them clash with the cultures of the everybody else around, and there ensues some confusion. But also, especially for the children who get confused by all these cultures being thrown at them. But persistence works. Repeated practice of that culture, it's maybe one of the things that are helping our children maintain their ancestral part, in as much as they may not do it as much as we want them to do, but they are embracing a whole lot. Let's start with language. It is said that African immigrants' communication with each other and their children can be direct, and we all know that, and may rely also on nonverbal cues. We know that the African parent can talk with their eyes, just looking at the child will tell them everything, just like they were brought up. My mother will look at you and you know exactly what she's looking at you for. It might be a good sign or bad sign, but um, the eyes will talk a lot. They are nonverbal cues, or raising a hand, or the way they walk, or the way they even sit, have a lot of cues to them, which they tend to combine with sometimes verbal communication in gestures. So the shake of the head or raise of a finger or just the switching of the face has a lot of information on them that sometimes these are lost on the children, the hyphenated children in diaspora, because they're not used to that. But with repeated, teaching of that or use of that, you could see that with some of our children making caricatures of their parents sometimes, just for fun. I'm not going to dwell a lot of that because that could take a whole day, and uh, uh, just watch some of the skits that they do about their African parents. That is funny. Some feelings may be masked and not show true meaning. So you, as somebody who doesn't have an African background, some of these may be lost on you, but the child who is being directed to will know. Especially when unhappy with children, the parents are unhappy with children they are disappointed in, or who misbehave in public. They might smile in public as this child is misbehaving. You, the child, you would know that that smile is not just a genuine smile. It's a smile of some things to come. Wait till we get home. That's what they're telling you. But, they may not, because of the laws of the land and everything in diaspora, not resort to corporal punishment or spanking. But the look, the smile, or the twist of the mouth will tell you that more is coming when you get home. Again, the language, most of the African immigrants work so hard to have their children be able to speak in their own dialects. A lot of the parents, some did not start in from the beginning, or some dropped along the way of making their children speak the dialect at home, and it comes back to haunt sometimes. Some people have set up, some engagements now where their children are taught the language of their origin. We always say that a child growing up is open to learn as many languages as possible. This was the notion that was lost among some African parents or African immigrants, even at the homestead, when they think that a child that is learning their ancestral language will not be able to, accommodate any other ones. But that tends not to be true. Some We have had children who learn 4 or 5 languages at the same time and fluent in them. So that's teaching a whole lot of lessons. That has helped us. And when a child is able to speak the ancestral language, it adds to them understanding the culture some more. But some of these young ones also will tell you that not knowing the language, the ancestral language, not knowing it does not, prevent them from understanding the culture. Yes, language is just one aspect of culture. It's an important one. But I always say to people, don't count those children out. They may understand the ancestral language without being able to speak it. The aspect that you find a lot of them now involved in is the pidgin English. Because one of the things that helped our African immigrants a whole lot in diaspora is the fact that English was taught from even kindergarten was spoken around them and insisted in schools. So you cannot finish your education back in Africa without really having a mastery in English language, both in spoken one and written one. So passing that down to the children. That is what every child can really speak very good English and write as well, majority of them, if not all. But we also find them trying to understand the street language that we call pidgin, um, eh, you know, uh, English, pidgin French in some French speaking area, and some other ones in between. Then let's talk about religion. That's another aspect where culture is relayed. African parents tend to guide their diaspora children towards their own religious beliefs and values. So you see a Baptist raising theirs in Baptist churches, um, Catholic raising Catholic, Muslim raising Muslims. Um, that's the norm because that's what they know, these African immigrants know, and then pass that down because within those are the values also that they embrace. And those values are passed down to their children as well. But what we are noticing is that, you know, sooner or later, these young ones tend to find um, their ways to their own preferred religion, the belief that are best suited for them in today or in the future. Okay. And sometimes the parents are disappointed. We've seen some, Christians revert to or change to Muslim religion or become Jewish. And you see some Muslims or Jewish ones or any other denomination out there convert to Christianity, to Catholicism, and all that. It happens. Some, especially the women, marry into another religion altogether. But what we have to really embrace is that some of these religions or, way of worship or beliefs, some of them have actually the same values all across. And these values are what we are hoping that the children will pick up as we raise them in diaspora. Cuisine, that's food. It's a cultural phenomenon all by itself. Ah, the cuisine of Africa. That is one area where our children, when they get a taste of it and they hang on to the taste, they don't want anything else from anywhere. I tell people that one test to know a true African immigrant and their offspring, so those hyphenated Africans in diaspora, is to place a bowl of macaroni and cheese in front of them or any other of such dishes. And then on the other side, place a bowl of jollof rice. It doesn't matter where the jollof rice comes from, Ghana, Nigeria, you know, you name it. They watch the child. The first thing they pick up is a bowl of jollof rice. I don't care who you look at there. Well, for whatever reasons, the goat meat, the jollof rice, the other specialties, there's a whole lot to name. Um, it's part of the culture. So when it comes to African cuisine, the African immigrants, their children, their offspring, that's part of what they do. And that's also part of what keeps them healthy. And health is part of what really makes people focus and be able to do their job very well. Maybe part of why people are finding, African immigrants successful. So most of the African cuisine are made of natural ingredients, dried or fresh. And so we are lucky that now, as years went by, African ingredients and menus are springing up everywhere, which didn't used to be that way in the beginning or the earlier African immigrants. So most of them resorted to eating a lot of processed foods and all that. But as time went on, you could buy things like yam, gari, all types everywhere, rice that you could make into anything. So we started having a lot of that. So, but our children are all keen and they love their fufu and the okra and the goosey soup. And the fun thing now is that their friends who are not of African origin have been introduced to these dishes that, um, if you are in doubt, watch on TV or social media and see how other people from other regions of the world beginning to enjoy a lot of the African dishes more than we do. And most of the time, they are even learning to prepare them. So go figure. But African arts are historic, unique, and well known all over the world. Again, some of you and I used to do that. Take mine and friends to the museum, and one of the ones we used to love to go to a lot is the African Museum because it has a whole lot of African art, and you could stay in there for hours trying to explain to the child while some artworks are the way they are. You may not even know it yourself that much, but with the internet now, and you can always pull one up, and they see and know where how that came about. And they're not only found in museums, but African parents have warmed up to and feel it's important to decorate their homes with a fusion of all these ancestral arts and combine them with contemporary designs. So in some homes, you will see African art on the wall, on the couches, in the kitchen, and everywhere else. And that's part of what is making our diasporans, engage with their ancestry. In such regards, our children who are born and raised in diaspora, in that manner, they assimilate the possibilities of all available African art and designs. And as time goes on, you see them mimicking the same things that their African immigrant parents did. They are now drawn to African art, and you see them doing more of those and engaging in, decorating their own homes in such manner. Okay. We talk about music. Ah, that's a big one. Africans in diaspora experience a lot of cultural handover in this arena. The hyphenated children of Africa are really into the music. As we speak, I can boldly say that African music is ruling the world. Nigerian music is ruling the world, even at every level of the ethnic, you know, groups. Their music is resounding out there, and that is a good thing. That comes with, excuse me, the cultural step dancings performed, you know, um, just as it is done in the ancestral home at the homestead. You see people now do masquerade steps, the Igbo traditional dances that sometimes I do on social media. And it's not just for fun. Yes, I have fun doing it, but I also have the motive of having the younger girls, see how it's done. I may not be perfect at it, but it's good for somebody to have an idea that it's doing and then go find somebody who is perfect or watch others who also do that on social media. It's important for us to not let those die. The young ones are desperate to find somebody who can teach them that. I share with people that I have done that before, and these children dance their hearts out and are able to be good at it. So music is part of our life as Africans, and African immigrants take that wherever they go. A lot of stories are told in African music, and the values are also found therein. And whether it's for the men, for the women, during funerals, during births, there are so many different aspects to the African music. And that's part of our success. When you go to some parties, some of the old African, music or songs that even just the African immigrant parents knew before they came over to diaspora, their children now enjoy. I was amused going to a graduation party of a young one that just graduated from college. And, there's this room, hall full of, the young ones. And they were all dancing to the African music right from home that were, played or, years and years before they were even, their parents even got married to be born, for them to be born. And they are now enjoying the same. And some of them are doing a good job of revitalizing some of those old music and making it modern. So kudos to them for that. Now let's talk about other social habits. Some of these are not directly taught by the parents. They are assimilated, as it will be difficult really to engage the young ones without rebellion. So one of the things with our African kids is that despite the fact that the African immigrants, their parents, were able to listen without asking questions to their parents, were able to do stuff without even asking. Their parents say, do jump, they jump. I say, how high? The parents sit, they say, okay, where do you want me to sit? I'll sit. And that's not like their children that they really are raising in diaspora. These ones have been born into or are being born into arena where you just don't swallow what is given you, you ask. So we have a lot of the why generation going on. And in the same token, you cannot force all these social habits that are African down their throats. If it doesn't make sense to them, they don't do it. If in doubt, ask anybody who has raised a child or is raising a child in diaspora. So let's look at the cultural fashion, the attires. The children of immigrants have embraced this habit with a beautiful twist. What do I mean by that? They have now added their own modern twist to that. If in doubt, watch some of the videos of our young ones with for example, I am from the Igbo ethnic group. We have our Isiagu. They now are adding and twisting and, you know, setting up that, particular material into making fantastic Igbo. You can say that it's still traditional outfit, but with a modern twist. It is Yoruba Agbada. They now have fashion lines that you wouldn't recognize in the same Agbada that their parents wore. The Hausa kaftan and their aspect, even those who cover their heads and their toes and all that, the fashion that is being made out of, that it's unbelievable. So that's the value we're talking about. So wherever they are, whether if they are in Timbuktu or in Iceland, they still have the pride of wearing all that. Um, Again, and one of the things that we are noticing nowadays or observing is that the world now is going to Africa for fashion. And most of them who are now doing weddings or traditional stuff, even the Caucasians and other people, Asians and all that, are beginning to really buy into the Igbo traditional outfits. And you could see that when they do their weddings and all that. And people now, just not just music, African fashion is becoming top in the world, and especially Nigerian um, tailors and designers. They are taking the world by the storm. Um, People now go there to do their wedding outfits and bridesmaid outfits. That is out of this world. So go figure. The dances, there's one African dancing, the African rhythm and ancestral rituals. Again, we put the twist to them. African music has cultural meaning, and sometimes their words are embedded in folklore. We've talked a little bit about that. Movies, we can't talk much about the Nollywood, for example, of Nigeria, where now the whole of Africa is, it buys into that. The Nollywood, which is the Nigerian arm of music, like the Bollywood in India and the Hollywood of the North America, it's really huge. Um, some dance rhythms are expressions of some of the African values that are being propagated in there. So the parents now provide avenues to make this happen. So these are some part of that. Another aspect of social habit, the marriage, um, is also being looked at. Africans observed the significance of traditional marriage even before the arrival of colonizers. So before for example, in Africa, the advent of Europeans or the other aspects of other nations that came to colonize that area, um, there were already marriages. So the African immigrant will always focus more on the traditional um, marriage that is part of the ancestral value. And there are stages of that. Some people have four, some people have one, some people have two. It depends on what region of Africa you are from. But just to let you know that the white wedding, the wedding in church, is actually not part of the African traditional marriage. That came later after um, the advent of Christianity. So we know. So this is where the traditional marriage is where prayers are rendered, and our ancestors are called upon to bless the marriage as well. And this is where also the ceremony to unify the two families or the two communities take place. We also have sports. The funny thing is that people, it depends on where you are. The football, universal for football, it's actually soccer. And then in the United States, there is also football and some other part of the world where they play the American football or some other people's football. There's exchange of two. But the good thing is that African immigrants, actually, their children, the hyphenated ones, engage in all sorts of competitive games and sports, locally and internationally, even in sports that they wasn't part of their parents' origin. They come into it, they excel. And this is one of the reasons why people keep also saying, wow, these Africans do well. The Africans do well in because when they do stuff, they put all their mind, they focused. They are focused on what they do. So some of the children now get into these sports that are new to even their parents, and they put their all and they excel. So these are some of the reasons why these African children or African immigrants do well and succeed. So the photo speak here is a kind of looking again at this picture. You will find a lot of stories in it, despite the fact that these children are everywhere. They are dark. They are from Africa. They have freedom of spirit. They jump around. They still focus. When it comes to what they have to do, that is where our success comes from. The success of focusing, of working harder than anybody else in all these aspects of culture and more, despite the fact that they also are swimming in other people's culture, they find a way to do that. And they're African immigrant parents. This is where they hold and guide and protect and try to shepherd the children to what is important. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they lose them, but the fact that they try. But what we say sometimes is consider in as much as the children would never forget their culture, and no matter what happens. But sometimes we got to let go of some aspects and let them make some decisions themselves. So the success of the diasporan Africans tends to rest on the odds of the application of the cultural influences the immigrant parents grew up in. These same cultural influences are applied to raising their hyphenated children. We talked about that. The culture in Africa are as diverse as the continent and shaped by prevalent multi-ethnic groups therein. Like I always have been sharing that things are done a little bit differently from my little village in Mbise to my state of Imo State and to my country, Nigeria, or even in other aspects of my ethnic group, Igbo. Africa also is very diverse that there are so many other aspects to that. Well, in Africa, there are over 1,000 plus languages spoken and as many dialects. And so you could go from community to community and people are doing something a little bit different, but there are always common values. And this is what we try to share with our children. Um, Languages, French and English are spoken. The Pidgin English is a street language, the Pidgin French, but many dialects, many values apply to the day-to-day living. However, circumstances do exist that influence culture, and we've talked about a lot of them. The environment one finds themselves in, the economic status, ideology ranges from place to place, people to people, family to family. Okay? These and more enhance the biological trait of the individual. So in diaspora and part, apart from the home, the African child is introduced further to other aspects of culture in early life as they accompany parents to indigenous parties and celebrations for example, traditional weddings, funerals, and other forms of life celebrations. They learn more. The word there is assimilation. So that's why we encourage when we have community gatherings or meetings that we, the African immigrants, the adults, we need to behave and show the true value of the cultural certain way we find ourselves, because our children are observing and they're learning, they are absorbing, they are assimilating. And when we do it wrong, they pick up the wrong. When we do it right, that's where our success comes in. We want to continue the success that people are applauding us for, or the accolades, but we got to do it right. The ultimate goal is for children um, to right from wrong. The ultimate goal is children to right, to know the right from the wrong. Okay. So um, again, um, we are talking about cultural influence. Why is it that Africans do so well in diaspora? And these are the aspects of this that we have enumerated, whether it's a cuisine, whether it's clothing, language, and all that. So wherever you are as an African immigrant, um, keep trying to do what you do, but with modification, with by also listening and knowing when to pull back and when to apply some more. That's all I got today. Well, I want to thank you for listening. Next time we will touch on another aspect of what we think. Maybe the reason why Africans do well, so well in diaspora. I thank you all, and ask you to subscribe to my podcast. Ask friends to listen and subscribe to my podcast. It's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, TikTok, and it's on Facebook. I also ask you to give stars if you can, and share this with your colleagues. And it's good for the young ones as well. And the good thing about this is that the podcast, you don't have to finish at a go. You can start and finish, and it really helps you meditate or just relax with a cup of cold water, if not anything else. So remember the spirit of Ubuntu. I am because you are, or we are. Thank you for listening to Dr. Marcellina and the Diaspora. I wish you well.